Joe Rogan responded majestically to a recent jab at him from co-host Joy Behar of The View. What caused this conflagration, and what was the response of the MMA pundit and podcast host? With Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and other co-anchors on The View, there are plenty of contentious viewpoints to be found. This also creates controversy or, at the very least, ruffles some feathers, because those anchors never back down from politics or other contentious subjects. Joy Behar never shies away from getting involved and changing things up. She recently attacked MMA analyst and podcast host Joe Rogan. Behar poked fun at Rogan for his dragon believing. After Walter Cronkite, we had this man Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons, she remarked. When I checked it, he too thought that dragons, which resembled dinosaurs, roamed the planet at the same time as humans. If you're not aware, Joe Rogan has a sizable fan base. Rogan is a huge star in his own right thanks to his comedy, his affiliation with the UFC, his podcast, and more. He was quick to respond to Joy Behar's bitter remarks against Rogan. A post about the incident was shared by Rogan on the well-known social networking site Twitter/X. "That's my new official X description," he wrote, adding that he reposted the video about dragon believer Joe Rogan. Whether dragons were real or not has been the subject of Rogan's numerous films, clips, and other posts since this encounter. Because of this, he is embracing this endeavor wholeheartedly, and his millions of admirers are thrilled. The dragon believer that Joe Rogan fans follow and this circumstance have sparked a lot of discussion among commenters on social media. Particularly when political ideas diverge, people love to see situations like this. Numerous commentators shared a variety of memes, including ones that referenced The Lord of the Rings, House of the Dragon, and Game of Thrones. Ultimately, it appears like Joe Rogan and his enormous fan base are enjoying themselves immensely due to this latest circumstance, which has produced countless moments of hilarious material. Consider The View as the arbiters of truth compared to the Joe Rogan show, one commentator said. One more person wrote, "Dragon believer, wow, I assume it's Puff the Magic Dragon." When two iconic figures from vastly different worlds collide in a public spat, it's bound to generate headlines. Joy Behar, one of the veteran hosts of The View, has long been known for her sharp wit, outspoken nature, and fiery takes on politics and culture. Joe Rogan, the popular yet polarizing host of The Joe Rogan Experience, thrives on pushing boundaries with his candid, sometimes controversial, conversations. So, when Joy Behar took aim at Joe Rogan during a recent segment of The View, it was no surprise that Rogan had a clap back ready, and it was as epic as his millions of followers have come to expect. In this article, we explore the origins of their feud, dissect Behar's criticisms, and unpack Rogan's response, which ignited a firestorm of debate across social media. It all began during a discussion on The View about misinformation and the responsibility of public figures in today's media landscape. As the panel dissected how misinformation spreads, the topic turned to Joe Rogan, a frequent subject of criticism for his no-holds-barred approach to podcasting. Behar didn't hold back. "The problem with someone like Joe Rogan," she said, "is that he has this massive platform, and he uses it to spread conspiracy theories, unverified information, and dangerous rhetoric. He's not a journalist, he's a guy with a microphone who thinks he knows everything." Her comment drew a mixture of laughter and applause from the audience, as well as nods from her co-hosts. Behar went on, "You can't just sit there, smoke a cigar, and talk nonsense with your buddies and call it meaningful discourse. There's a responsibility that comes with having an audience that big." Joe Rogan is no stranger to criticism, especially from traditional media outlets and talk shows like The View. While he often brushes off detractors, Behar's remarks struck a nerve. Perhaps it was the tone of dismissiveness or the implication that his audience lacked critical thinking skills. Either way, Rogan decided to respond, publicly and unapologetically. During an episode of The Joe Rogan Experience, Rogan addressed Behar's comments with his signature mix of humor, candor, and biting critique. "Oh, Joy Behar doesn't like me?" Rogan started, laughing. "Well, I guess I'll have to cancel my plans to care." His sarcastic tone set the stage for a monologue that would trend for days. "Here's the thing about Joy and people like her," Rogan continued. "They sit in their cushy little studios with their pre-written scripts, their talking points handed down from producers, and then they point fingers at people like me, people who actually have conversations. I don't pretend to be a journalist. I'm just a guy who likes talking to interesting people." Rogan then addressed the accusation of spreading misinformation. "I don't claim to have all the answers. I've had doctors, scientists, comedians, and hunters on my show. You know what they all have in common? They're human beings. They have opinions. Sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes I'm wrong. But at least we're having the conversation." He punctuated his clap back with a jab. "Joy, when was the last time you had a guest on your show who disagreed with you?" "Oh, that's right. Never." As clips of both Behar's remarks and Rogan's response circulated online, the debate quickly spiraled into a full-blown cultural moment. Fans of The View defended Behar, applauding her for holding Rogan accountable. "She's absolutely right," one user tweeted. "Joe Rogan is reckless with his platform." Rogan's supporters, however, rallied behind his unapologetic response. "Joy Behar doesn't understand the difference between a conversation and propaganda," another user posted. The hashtags #TeamJoy and #TeamJoe began trending, highlighting the stark divide between their audiences. The clash between Behar and Rogan is emblematic of a broader cultural divide. Behar represents the legacy of traditional talk shows, where topics are pre-planned, narratives are carefully controlled, and the audience expects a polished product. Rogan, on the other hand, embodies the raw, unfiltered world of new media, where podcasts thrive on unpredictability, long-form discussion, and the exploration of controversial ideas. Behar's criticisms reflect a frustration with the rise of platforms like Rogan's, which have disrupted the media landscape. Rogan's response underscores his disdain for what he sees as the rigid, out-of-touch nature of traditional media. At the heart of the feud is a critical question: what is the responsibility of a public figure with a massive platform? Behar argues that Rogan has a duty to vet his guests and ensure accurate information is presented. "Freedom of speech is important," Behar said in a follow-up segment on The View. "But when you have millions of people listening to you, you have a responsibility to be careful about what you put out there." Rogan, however, sees his role differently. "I'm not a news anchor," he said during his podcast. "I'm just a guy who likes to talk. My listeners aren't idiots. They can think for themselves." The Behar-Rogan feud also highlights the challenges of modern media consumption. Both The View and The Joe Rogan Experience cater to specific audiences, creating echo chambers where viewers or listeners are rarely exposed to opposing viewpoints. Critics of Behar argue that The View often preaches to the choir, with little room for dissenting opinions. Likewise, critics of Rogan contend that his platform amplifies fringe ideas without sufficient scrutiny. In the court of public opinion, reactions to the feud varied widely. Many praised Behar for addressing the issue of misinformation, calling her a voice of reason. "Joy is absolutely right to call out Rogan," one commenter wrote. "His podcast is a breeding ground for conspiracy theories." Others sided with Rogan, applauding his authenticity and willingness to engage with controversial topics. "Rogan's not perfect, but at least he's real," a fan tweeted. Behar wouldn't survive 5 minutes in an unscripted conversation. The spat between Behar and Rogan is more than just a clash of personalities. It reflects the tension between old and new media, the challenges of navigating misinformation, and the polarized nature of public discourse today. It raises important questions about the role of media in shaping public opinion. Should traditional outlets adapt to the unfiltered style of platforms like Rogan's? Or should new media figures take greater responsibility for the influence they wield? Despite their differences, Behar and Rogan share one commonality: their ability to spark conversation. While their feud may never result in mutual understanding, it serves as a reminder of the power and peril of having a platform in the digital age. As Behar herself said during her closing remarks on The View, "We may not agree on everything or anything, but at least we're having the conversation." And Rogan, true to form, ended his rebuttal with a laugh. "Hey, Joy, if you ever want to come on the podcast and have a real conversation, the door's open." The feud between Joy Behar and Joe Rogan is a snapshot of a larger cultural divide, encapsulating the tension between traditional and modern media, free speech and responsibility, and the ongoing battle over who controls the narrative. Whether you're hashtag Team Joy or hashtag Team Joe, one thing is clear: this debate isn't just about two media personalities. It's about the future of how we consume and understand information.